If I get an award and I have an opportunity to thanks, I also thanks to the people who try to make my life miserable, because they made me work harder, more resilient.
Speaking with Katalin Karikó, I was just so struck by how incredibly positive she is about everything, whether it's disappointments in the work or awful colleagues or rejections or losing her job. It's all good. And what a wonderful way to live. I mean, personally, I am constantly set back by things that don't go the way I hope they would be. But it doesn't seem to faze her at all. What an extraordinary ability she has. And it comes over in abundance listening to her talk. So do stay with me for this conversation with Katalin Karikó.
This is Nobel Prize Conversations, and our guest is Katalin Karikó, recipient of the 2023 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. She was awarded for discoveries concerning nucleoside-based modifications that enabled the development of effective mRNA vaccines against COVID-19. She shared the prize with Drew Weissman. Your host is Adam Smith, Chief Scientific Officer at Nobel Prize Outreach. This podcast was produced in cooperation with Fundación Ramón Arefes. Katalin Karikó shares her time between the private sector and academia as a senior vice president at BioNTech and an adjunct professor of neurosurgery at the University of Pennsylvania. In this conversation, she talks about raising an Olympic champion, getting up early to make breakfast for her lab team, and how a book by János Selye, the Hungarian-Canadian scientist who coined the term stress, formed her whole approach to the ups and downs of life. But first, Adam and Kati discuss how she sees her place in the battle against COVID.
In his will, Alfred Nobel indicated that he wanted the Nobel Prize to go to those who had brought the greatest benefit to, mankind, as he said, and humankind, as we say now. Benefit to humankind is a difficult thing to define, but in this case, the benefit of the vaccination program during COVID was absolutely apparent. And I just wanted to start by asking how it feels to walk around and know that most of the people you're passing in the street have been injected with a vaccine that most likely you were instrumental to developing.
I perceive things differently. I feel that all of those who came before us, all of the science and what I learned from them and my colleagues here at university or at BioNTech, everybody just worked together. I don't feel that I did. I felt that everybody did their part and I was just one of those. That's how I feel. Otherwise, it would be overwhelming, probably, but that's how I felt always. And as I mentioned many times, I was not craving recognition, that somebody would know that I did something. It was, for me, it was enough that I knew, even without any pandemic, I knew that what I was doing is good and one day it will be helpful for people. And that's why I went to Germany. I commuted for a decade to make sure that this product will enter to the clinic and will help somebody. And I wanted to stay as long as I could see somebody will be helped. And I just put one thing, and many, many people, that did important things.
Certainly, so many people were involved, and it's a communal effort, and that's, I suppose, the wonderful thing about science. But nevertheless, it's unusual to see the direct benefit of your work in the way that you and the others who are involved in this program have been able to. Can I just get you to reflect a little bit on the impact of the work?
The biggest feeling, what I was generated inside, it was that this Meadowbrook elderly home where they get a COVID infection broke out. Just 1 week after everybody received one injection. And then they sent me the letter that when the first person get infected, everybody thought that 1/3 of the people will be gone and nobody died. Then they made this Katalin Karikó Appreciation Day, and they were celebrated. They had a T-shirt, and they want to be grateful to somebody. And they sent me pictures when, the children of those elderly people could visit the home, and the joy. I was happy that I was part of it. I know that, they celebrated me, but I can tell you that it was more important than any award, including the Nobel Prize. Reading that letter, seeing those pictures.
That's lovely. And I suppose, yes, it's a very interesting point that people wanted somebody to thank. When I think of, in the UK, people standing on the streets applauding the NHS on a weekly basis, they were just, I suppose, just wanting to say thank you to somebody. How lovely to be the person they're saying thank you to sometimes.
I mean, the most I thankful to those people who were working in the hospitals, all of the healthcare workers, because they risked their life. They went every day taking care of the patient, and they didn't know that they can infect it or infect their own family. They risk the most, and they are the real heroes.
So your story has become very famous. People know you as the person who believed in the power of mRNA therapeutics against considerable adversity and stuck with it. Is there a simple answer to the question of what gave you the resilience to stick with your beliefs?
I think that learning how to handle the stress, that how not to pay attention and not to divert when I believe in something. And it was all coming from when I was 16 years old and I was reading János Seje book about our life and the stress. I am not a religious person, so we didn't get some words from the church or to know what to follow. And that was what I really followed my life. It was like some Stoic philosophy that I just focus on what I can change. And all of this outside opinion, I just take it as learning. Like if it is hurtful, I learn that I won't do and won't say somebody this because it's hurtful. Everything is learning. Even from very early on, when one of my teachers said that he will make sure that I won't get accepted to the university, he will arrange that. I realized that not everybody is rooting for me, and also that I had to even work harder to make sure that I will be the best and they will still accept me. So, if he would say to me when I was 18 that he will arrange, it was very difficult to get into the university, he will arrange that I will get accepted. Oh, somewhere I would just sit back. So that's why, if I get an award and I have an opportunity to thanks, I also thanks to the people who try to make my life miserable, because they made me work harder, more resilient. And that's how you process. That's the stress, because the stress can kill you, as, Seje demonstrated. He coined the word stress for the human feelings. And so that you have to learn how to make this negative stress to positive, because the positive we need, the anticipation and excitement, we need that. Otherwise, we wouldn't get up in the morning. So you have to learn and practice. It's not easy. Seje described that when you are angry, the fastest way you can release your anger and the stress is revenge. And he said, but never do that, because it hits you back and it escalates and it gets worse and you never get down and quiet. He said, you have to find something to be grateful for the same person you are just ready to make a revenge, because the gratitude is also get back to you.
It's amazing to me that you learnt this when you were 16, because of course there are examples of this idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and being grateful for adversity, but it takes forever to learn. And yet you, at the age of 16, decided you were going to read about it and learn. What drove you to be so, if you like, mature about yourself at 16?
Oh, actually, in the high school, we sent a letter to Seje. He's Hungarian and we couldn't speak English. We learned Russian in the school, and we sent him a letter and he responded. So we get so excited, and his book was published in Hungarian, so we read the book. And then in the biology after-school program, we discussed what this means, what we have to do. And so it was not just I am reading by myself. We discussed with the other students and with the teacher, biology teacher. We also sent letters, Albert Szent-Györgyi, and he also responded. And that's why I feel responsibility in these days to respond to high school students and help them, because you never know.
So you were already very switched on at the age of 16. You were interested, curious, ready to be a scientist.
In elementary school, I was already competing in biology. And I was, in a very small town, and I was third best in the country.
Well, okay, so did that come from within?
So we had a garden, and we had animals, and so I was just curious with many of the other kids, and of course, great teachers. And my parents also, encouraged us to study because they had no opportunity. My father had 6 elementary and my mother had 8.
Your father was a butcher, wasn't he?
Yes. He was a butcher, and I watched, when he cut up the animals, and I was told that I was curious. I want to see what is inside. No, he's not running the animal. What made it run?
What about your mother? What did she do?
My mother was, she had just 8 elementary, but then when we were born, she attended night schools and she became a bookkeeper. She was reading always books, and then she was very, even computer-wise, she was 80 years old. She got her own laptop finally because she wanted her own. She could look at everything on the internet. She could set up the VCR, for example, to watch one channel and record on the other one. I mean, she was technically great.
I don't think I can do that. And she was a great believer in you. As you mentioned during our lovely conversation in October, on the day that you heard the news of your award, you mentioned that she believed you were going to get it every year.
Yes, sure. My mother told me, Kati, next week is announcing who gets the Nobel Prize. I will listen. You might get it. They might say your name. I told her, don't worry.
Hey, mothers are always right?
I mean, really, 10 years ago, I was kicked out from Penn. I was, after 24 years, I remember, no goodbye party, nothing, just get out. And I walked to the parking lot and, was thinking, what next? Because that's what I emphasize to young one also, that things happen to you. And so you don't have to think too much about why happened to you, because this is other people's decision. And you have to focus on, okay, but what I do next is mine. And so that's what you have to spend all of your focus, energy. Otherwise, you are just, bitter.
So even on that day in 2013, you remembered the lessons you learnt when you were 16, and you were able to take the positive from it and think, okay.
I was 30 years old. I was terminated in Hungary in my position. When I was 40 years old in 95, I was demoted from faculty position at Penn, and I became senior research investigator. And then I keep working like nothing happened. Literally, I said, the bench is here. I am in the United States of America. Where else, if not here, I could do what I want? And so I still had the bench.
So Katalin Karikó's work has focused on mRNA. Can you explain to us in simple terms what mRNA is, Adam?
I'll give it a go. We are all taught that the DNA in our bodies contains the information that creates everything we are. And mRNA is a single-stranded messenger molecule in that pathway of information flow. So it transfers information from the DNA to the ribosome, which is the machine in cells that makes the proteins that make us.
And why is this mRNA messenger molecule potentially useful as a therapeutic?
Well, you can see that in all sorts of therapeutic applications, it might be good to tell the body to make a particular protein. You might want to do so for some particular disease, Or in this case, you might want to do so because making proteins is an essential part of the pathway to producing vaccines in many cases.
And how are proteins used for producing vaccines?
A vaccine is trying to get the body to produce antibodies that it will then use to stop an infection by some agent. And in this case of the COVID virus, what you want to do is to give a piece of the COVID virus that isn't dangerous to the body, get the immune system to recognize that piece, produce antibodies, and therefore be ready for a real attack by the COVID virus later. Mm-hmm. You can produce those proteins in the body, those non-harmful proteins, in various different ways. And one way is to give the body the mRNA that makes the protein, have the body produce that protein, have the immune system recognize it, and then have these antibodies ready for when the real virus attacks. And the protein for COVID that has standardly been chosen as the one that gets the immune system going is the spike protein on the outside of the COVID virus.
And how did Karikó and Weissman's work help with this process of developing the COVID vaccine?
What they noticed was that mRNA that's made outside the body in the lab evokes its own immune reaction if it's given to somebody, so that it doesn't get to do its job because the body immediately recognizes it as an invader, as foreign, and eliminates it. And they found a way around that. They recognized that the problem was that the mRNAs that are being made in the lab aren't chemically modified in the same way as those that are made naturally by cells. And they worked out what kind of modification they needed to make in order to produce lab-built mRNA that was acceptable to the body and could get on and do its job and produce proteins.
So that sounds like a really important discovery. I think they published this in a paper back in 2005, but it didn't get much attention at the time. Why was that?
No, I think they were quite struck by the thunderous silence they encountered. People did see its importance, but yeah, it didn't fly in the way that they thought it might. And I suppose the answer is that research findings take time to filter through. People are not particularly looking for that at the time. People are not recognizing its importance, not seeing how to apply it. If you think of the 1953 paper in Nature announcing Watson and Crick's proposal for the structure of DNA, that's always talked about as a truly groundbreaking moment, and indeed it was. But it also took time for the implications of that paper to be really widely felt. And it wasn't, for instance, until 1960 that Watson and Crick were nominated for the Nobel Prize. That's 7 years later. And you might have thought if the impact was so enormous, that might have happened sooner. So I guess it's just a case of things take time to filter through and be understood. The delay in the importance being recognised was certainly not ideal for Katie Karikó.
Yes, it's really interesting to see the similarities here. And how did Katalin deal with delays like this and other setbacks in her career?
Yeah, she certainly had a lot of setbacks, which seems deeply unfair. But she speaks very candidly and interestingly about the way she dealt with the rejection and setbacks she encountered at Penn. So let's listen to her.
I don't blame even those people who evaluated. I don't know who did, because there are 10 names there, but I can imagine they had children, they have teams, and they have to submit grants and write papers, and they look at there and it probably was not well written or something, and they didn't understand. So that's the other thing. I always, when I get back any rejection, I always thought that when I was reading that, probably would say, oh, they are stupid, they didn't understand. This is said, oh, they didn't understand. Probably I didn't write well, so they couldn't understand. And this is a practice. It's not coming easy because the people easier to blame somebody and easier to say that, oh, they should accept my paper, they should accept my grant, my husband should be that, my children should do. People want always other people what they should do. My neighbor should be quiet. You cannot change that. You always have to say, okay, what I can do. I can move out in the neighborhood or, something.
It's such a powerful philosophy, and I think I envy you the strength to keep applying it in every circumstance. But when it comes to your own research, you must have had a really strong belief that you were right. Because if people are telling you, no, we're not funding this, you might begin to listen to them and think, hang on, maybe they're right. But that didn't occur to you. You were sure that you were on the right track.
And every time when the response came back, I already, again, could see something improvement. So, okay, now I have a new cap. And then with this one, I get more protein. And so I can further improve the process, because the criticism was that the RNA degrades quickly. I was told that it could be a medicine if it has a shelf life of 2 years. And of course, at that point, we mix the transit and the RNA, and 2 minutes we have to inject, because otherwise it gets aggregates. And so that it had to be somehow frozen and taken out, aliquots, so that 2 years later. So that's what I have to work on. And in a laboratory, even people are making decisions above my head, but in the laboratory, I was in full control. And this is like in the 21st century, I did most of the things myself. There were no technician. I had no monies to hire anybody. So I was making all of the solution and culturing the bacteria, making the RNA, culturing the cells, evaluating. And when I was doing, I was always thinking, if it's not coming out what I expect, maybe this or this. It is good if you do these things. I was 58 years old. I did all of this still myself, all of these experiments.
It's a great gift not to be precious about sort of being in charge, about being director and having people working for you and everything, but actually just accepting that it's okay to do these things yourself. Because obviously it works better in your case.
Yes, and during the pandemic, many group leaders realized they are just manager. They are managing, they have to bring in the money because they had to be paid, all of those co-workers. The joy is really to do an experiment and expect, and then thinking, what could be that? So that's the joy.
I remember another great experimentalist, Nobel laureate, Oliver Smithies, saying very proudly, I've never been director of anything.
They ask me many times, so tell me how you can be successful. I believe that it's not the success, it is that you are happy. That's number one thing. Whatever you are doing, you have to feel happiness. You have to have a physical and mental health. And for that one, I exercise every day, today, yesterday, every day. I, myself, you're okay. Once I run the marathon, but you don't have to go that far. Just like even in Germany, 6 kilometers every morning before I went to work. And also this handling the stress, you have to practice it and you have to enjoy. If you ask my husband, all of this frustration seems from outside. He never could see me come home and complaining about that and that. No, he always was convinced that I am having so much fun that he said, you are not going to work. I am going to get fun there.
You seem to have got various of the secrets of life worked out here. Live as you want to live. Don't be pulled in directions you don't want to go because of what's going on around you.
And, the people I could see also, they are living up to an expectation of something. They think that that's what they expected from them. And then not their life. I mean, I met my husband. He's 5 years younger. And my mother was, that's, she said, that's okay. No, he's, let's say, 17, you are 23, that's fine. But no, when he's 40, you are 45. And 45 years old woman is an old woman. And a 40 years old man is a young one. So I told, okay, I will divorce when 45. And that's it. I went after. So there's nobody could influence me, to tell me that it is not right to do something. So that's what I tell the people, because then they don't have regret. It was my decision.
The move to Germany, to BioNTech, was forced upon you by the fact that you had to leave Penn. And it was hard because you had to commute between the US and Germany. But it turned out to be a good thing.
Yes, I enjoyed very much there. It seemed that the goal was to make a product which will help somebody. Otherwise, we can go home. And it's over. So it was more meaningful than more paper, and more reference. And it was great that we all worked together. It was not a competition. I could see the people here in academia, they didn't even start something and they were, oh, I will be the first out or last out. Oh, God, And there, we just have to work together and everybody helped in. And this doesn't matter. And I was there and I worked day and night, really, because my family was here and I was alone. And I spent whole weekend, I remember, Saturday, Friday, or midnight already, morning, and I was still reading because I read a lot during that time. And I had a team, finally, and they were all great scientists.
That is quite a privilege to, despite the hardship of being away from home, to be suddenly given time to yourself again and be allowed to just use it as you wish.
Yes, it was great. And, I was assisting my team so that every morning I bring the breakfast for the team. And then I was the last one to leave. So I was the first and I was the last. I was cheering for them. I tried to assist them what they need and always let them to come up with what next we should do. So because if you tell somebody, oh, okay, you look at the data quickly, you can say, probably this is what if you tell, that's not the same. If they come to the conclusion, they are much more enthusiastic to do that. And my team, they even today, nobody left. My team is still there.
Listening to you, that's not so surprising. You sound like an inspirational leader.
Yeah, so that they should not respect somebody because they were put above them or something. When they said boss to me, no, I am a colleague. So I want to, as a team, to work together. And inside, we discuss and fight with, for what, how to do. But in outside, that was one thing when I fighted that everybody should be associate director. And then finally I had to go to the union to say why this person, because how could it be that my whole team will be promoted? But I thought that everybody is independent, they could lead a team. But they wanted to stay in my team.
Yes, and it worked.
Yeah, it was successful. Everybody was promoted.
That's a very good solution to the problem of staying put and not getting promoted. Just take everyone along with you, yes.
Yeah, they are doing great, and I am so proud of them. And that was one prior to the pandemic, when we realized one day that changing a little thing was tremendously changed the translatability of the RNA. And we get so much more protein. And we have to figure out why, because we had a clinical product already. And then it was like, okay, so we can do this. And then when we discussed, I didn't have to say that you should come Saturday or Sunday, and because this is very urgent. Everybody, I will come, I will that, everybody said, so that we had just sorted out.
What a joy to be part of an enterprise like that. Talking of the working relationships with your team, let's think about how you worked with Drew Weissman, because you are quite opposite characters. You obviously hit it off enormously well. What was the secret of your successful relationship?
We were experts in a different field, so it was constantly educating each other. So I learned all of the immunology, the modern immunology. I learned in school also, at the university, but that was already out, that was changing that field so quickly. And I was not paying that much attention to immunology before that. And I learned all of these things from him. And I was helping him set up his lab. And we never worked in the same lab, actually, not even the same building. We were in different departments. So we educated each other. And then when we had performed an experiment, we decided that, we will do that. He didn't get much money at the beginning, so he prepared the dendritic cells himself. And then I performed the experiment, made RNA. And so then what the experiment meant. And then, we will have different views on it. I remember when at the beginning, when we discovered, for example, that modification, if the modification was not present in the RNA, we get so much interferon. And he, as a physician, thought, maybe the lupus patient has so much interferon because they might not modify their RNA. So he ran away and get from some colleagues some sample from lupus patient that we looked at the RNA, isolated and, okay, not. But, I would not think that much about these patients. And I have, different things which is more technical, many technical problems we had to solve, like the purification. I remember New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, I was there in the lab because I always thought about, okay, now this is how to purify the long RNA. Nobody figured out how to, but that I get an idea. And I told my husband that I could park right in the door. Nobody was there. You try many things and it not worked out that way. But eventually, after 2 years, we did figure out how to purify. And again, we drew, we discussed, and he tried things, and he came like to the HPLC, changing different columns, what we should do. And so he was very involved. And sometimes I said, oh no, I give up on that. And he did still doing it. And then, okay, maybe you are right. And so Drew in the laboratory, when we looked at data, and he was just same way, cut into my words. And he was very talkative. And what we should do, what did it mean?
It sounds like two people really enjoying each other's curiosity, which is exactly what science should be. You've received so many prizes now and a lot of public recognition. Do you think your role has changed because of all that?
I have to say that at the beginning, when I had to give interviews, I didn't know what should I say. And I was just like, sometimes I couldn't say anything. And then I later realized that, okay, I think that giving prize and these prizes is very divisive because there are so many people. I should break into pieces and give it out to the people. But in the same time, the attention is on science and the scientists, and it is celebration. So it is important that science is celebrated and the people get more knowledge on what scientists are doing. And many people at the beginning asked me that, they wanted to write my story. And I asked my daughter, I said, you know my story, you know Hungarian, English. So finally, she found an agency, and that's how, my book was born, that kind of describing that how much fun is the scientist. I also, in these different occasions, I want to emphasize that when they said, oh, you struggle, I don't want to describe the scientist's life as a struggle, because then people run away. It was not struggle. It is fun. Okay, getting grant and support and other things, yes, you have to work for it, but this is not like a pain or something. It is, every time I learned so much. I love to write grant. I did not emphasize to colleagues actually at Penn because people not really like it. But I learned so much because I had to think about, what will be the outcome, what it means, and I had to read and learn. So here, when I get different awards, I try to emphasize first that science is fun. To be scientist is something you get paid for enjoying your time there, and also encourage the young one, that science is maybe what is good for them. So that's one thing, and I try to help and be a little bit a cheerleader for other scientists. And because my story is more people can associate, because usually you are not getting promotion and immediately so successful, because I went down. I experienced all of these things, and I am an alien, I am a woman talking with accent, and more people could feel, and they were just happy that, okay, give them hope that you just keep focusing and not complaining that much.
And so would it have been a fulfilled and happy existence if it hadn't worked? If you just chased your curiosity, gone down and found another thing to do, but somehow at the end of it, you hadn't seen it all come right?
I could see that, RNA entering clinical trial, because it happened already prior to the pandemic. So for me, it would be satisfactory. How many times, when I was flying and I could look down and people, even cars disappear because everything is so tiny, I always thought, 100 years from now, nobody will remember we ever existed. So this fight for recognition is whenever in me. I could see that, okay, people are using this, Moderna. I mean, I was there. I was so happy. I was reading at the beginning that they discovered the modification. I said, okay, it's not really they, but who cares? Something happened. They are using for clinical trial and something is happening. And I was happy, honestly. Didn't complain to anybody that, oh, they are using. No, it was good. It is good that they are using for and pushing it. And who cares?
I was here and something happened.
Yeah, I have that process. And when they will have cure or something, I said, oh, I did my part. And for me, it was enough that I would know. And not the whole wide world.
It is such a pleasure to speak to you. And it is inspirational. I mean, you seem to be somebody who really knows yourself. You know what you're about. I think it's quite rare to have such a clear vision of how to steer your way through life and remain on an even keel.
Yeah, I mean, I also tell many times in an award ceremonies, to the girls that, they can be mother. And my daughter also turned out quite right, and
there's an understatement. As an Olympic champion.
Yeah, so now that grandchildren that's the thing for them, Oh, mommy got 2 Olympic gold medals, grandma get a Nobel Prize. Okay, what they should do?
Now that might be a worry, actually, yes.
Yeah. But that's what's important. I told the potential parents of young scientists that don't over-assist your child, No tough love. You have to love, but you have to let them to contribute to the family life. Just like when I was a child, with my sister, we did many chores, but it was like we didn't feel that it is a work. It was like we are part of the family, and we were happy that we could do. And we were so proud that we could do things. I mean, my sister could cook. She was in elementary school, and my parents had to work long hours. And of course, I was always the assistant because she's 3 years older. So I just peeled the potato or made the fire because we had stove. And she was, cooking and so on. And so my daughter was the same, She learned that she had to get up, dress, go to school. And when a child could see me and my husband working diligently, that's what they will remember. That's what they want to follow. You can tell them that, oh, do your homework. You are watching TV. You are not doing enough. Then they see that. And all of the things that, like my parents, I was so proud. What they said to me and to other people in their eye behind them, it was the same. But not everybody is like that. And, these kind of straightforward, honest people were my parents. And I thank them a lot, not just the genes I got.
Well, how nice. And yes, it's just going back in conclusion to that amazing statement you make that you thank everybody along the way, those who contributed, those who helped, those who hindered. Everybody made you what you are and made it all possible.
And I think that in the first, 10 years of your life, whatever influence you see, your parents, how your siblings, your school, the teacher, that's how you are shaped. And then, when you are a teenager, in high school, you are rebel, but then eventually you will be that person.
That's a very nice point to stop on. I think that all of those with rebelling teenagers will hold on to that thought. It's been an enormous pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much indeed for giving your time.
Thank you.
You just heard Nobel Prize Conversations. If you'd like to learn more about Katalin Karikó, you can go to nobelprize.org, where you'll find a wealth of information about the prizes and the people behind the discoveries. Nobel Prize Conversations is a podcast series with Adam Smith, a co-production of Filt and Nobel Prize Outreach. The producer for this episode was Karin Svensson. The editorial team also includes Andrew Hart, Olivia Lundquist, and me, Claire Brilliant. Music by Epidemic Sound. If you'd like to explore the journey of another laureate saving lives through their research, listen to our earlier episode with chemistry laureate Carolyn Bertozzi. You can find previous seasons and conversations on Acast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.